Hello, I'm Carwyn Jones, and welcome to this series of podcasts where I talk to the movers and shakers in the Welsh economy. What's their background? What are they doing now? And what do they see the future of Wales as being, not just in their line of business, but for the country as a whole? I'm delighted to be joined today by Katy Chamberlain, who is the Chief Executive at Business in Focus. Katy, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Today. I wanted to explore with you at the beginning, if I could, your journey towards becoming the CEO of Business in Focus. You started off with KPMG.
I did start off with KPMG.
Okay, what took you to KPMG?
Well, it's a slightly humbling story because I did a genetics and zoology degree at Leeds University. We were a science-based family. I went on because I didn't have a job at the end of that because that was ended in 1983 and there was a recession going on. So I went on to do an MSc in animal production of all things, and during the course of that realised that I had absolutely no desire whatsoever to work in my scientific field. So quite simply, I started at A on the list of jobs that came round on the milk round and went into accountancy. So it turned out to be absolutely the best thing for me because I found I just like working with people and I like working with businesses.
Now, fairness and gender equality are obviously very important to you because you were a trustee and board member at Chwarae for 4 years, chief exec of Chwarae for over 4 years, and the chair of the South East Wales Women in Management Network again for over 3 years. What took you in that direction? There you are in KPMG. You go to Chwarae. I mean, first of all, we should explain to our listeners what Chwarae is. I mean, many people will know, many people won't know. Give us an idea what Chwarae is as an organisation.
Well, Chwarae is a bit of a unique charity in the UK. It is a Welsh charity that is all about the economic development of women, so helping women to progress in the workplace or in business.
And you became a trustee back in 2004. How did that come about?
I was invited to join following one of the partners in KPMG, Sharon Linnard, left the board of Chwarae and asked them if they'd like to have a replacement from KPMG, and I got the opportunity to go, and it was a fantastic experience. I learned so much.
So much so that you then became the chief executive.
I did.
For 4 years and 7 months.
Indeed.
Right. What were the major challenges at that time? We'll come on to where you see things now in a little bit. But at that time, what did you find were the major challenges in being able to deliver on what you wanted to do?
Well, it was a very new thing for me. So the first thing I had to establish was that the skills and abilities I'd learnt in KPMG were right for running what was essentially a small business, but also a charity. But the biggest issue for us at that time was we were promoting equality and diversity and asking companies to make changes to support the progression of women. And all of a sudden, the economy was falling off a cliff. So these things that had been really quite high on people's agendas suddenly became things that were very nice to have but were difficult to do. So we had to raise our game in terms of helping organisations to understand how that would genuinely benefit them and their performance rather than just being a nice ethical thing to have.
Now, obviously you're not involved with Chwarae in a professional role anymore, but what changes have you seen since you left Chwarae? What's improved and what is still yet to be done, do you think?
Well, I would say that we've seen a massive amount of progress, and it's accelerated over the last few years, where gender has become less of a women's issue and more of a general issue. And I really welcome that because it's one of the things in Chwarae that was very key to what we did, that this wasn't just a thing for women. I think the barriers that are still there largely come from circumstances that women find themselves in. So I think you still have the logistical issues that because many women take caring responsibilities in the home, and while that is changing, it's still the case that it's predominantly women, that leads to logistical issues, whether that's in running your own business or whether that's in progressing in work. And also the things that the backgrounds from which women come. There are many more women who are economically inactive before they go back to work, who are have taken career breaks, who are in part-time roles that don't necessarily attract training. So you end up with a situation where women may be approaching the world of work or the world of business with less training and fewer networks, and therefore sometimes less confidence in what they need to do. That's a circumstantial thing, so it affects anybody in that situation, but of course many of the people in that situation are women, so it is an issue for a women's organisation like Chwarae.
And when you were Chief Executive of Chwarae, you were also the chair of the South East Wales Women in Management Network. Tell us a bit about what you did there.
Well, the Women in Management Network still exists under the name of Group, and that was a really nice initiative that aimed to help women to access three of the things that are most important in overcoming some of the barriers. So the first was all of our network sessions, we would have an inspirational women speaker. And that helped people to have access to role models and people who they could aspire to. And we didn't ask those people to come and give a presentation. We would ask them to be interviewed. So we were able to draw out of them the journey that had taken them to whatever heights of glory they were at. And that was really important because it made it more accessible for the people that were sitting in the network. And then the second thing it did, we took a very structured approach to running the network sessions so that people didn't feel they had to stand in a corner and be lost and wonder whether their trousers were going to fall down or their hair was going to burst into flames. They were helped and supported to engage with the network. We'd have some facilitated sessions to talk about what the speaker had been discussing and what that meant for the individuals. So people got a bit of practice at networking, they got a learning experience, they saw a role model, and that worked both for women who were very experienced in networking and very confident, but it also worked for women who had never done this before and for whom it was all a bit scary. And so it was a sort of training ground for people, while equally each session was a fantastic and great fun session. I loved that. That was one of my favourite things.
Let's move on. You went to the Wales Quality Centre as a board member, and then you were deputy chair of the strategy board of ICAW Wales. And in November 2012, you became the chief executive of Business in Focus. It sounds a bit like this is your life, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
And you've been there for nearly 7 years. First of all, tell us a bit about Business in Focus. There are many of our listeners who will have heard of Business in Focus, but perhaps won't necessarily know what Business in Focus does in detail. So in terms of the organisation, what do you do?
Okay, well, we are a social enterprise and our mission is to support enterprise. But that's very easy to say. What does it actually mean? Well, our clients are people who want to start in business, to turn their business dream into reality, and people who are in business who might just want their business to survive, or they might want to grow, to take it international, to turn it into something global. And we help those people to reach their ambitions. And we do that through the use of two key assets. The first is we have an absolutely fantastic team. So we currently have 109 people, and of those, 40 odd of them are advisors. And those are people who, in most cases, have run their own business. They are knowledgeable and they are accustomed to turning that knowledge into robust support for businesses and for people who are aiming to start their own business, and they're very dedicated. And sitting behind that, we have all of the client support and administration and leadership that's required to make that work for our end users. And we deliver the advice and training that we do through those advisors under a number of government funded contracts. So we deliver the Business Wales flagship support programme for Welsh Government, delivering that with partners. There's very little that we do completely on our own. And we also deliver the startup loan and elements of Big Ideas Wales. We then have the second asset, which is our spaces. So we provide flexible accommodation for businesses across that South Wales. This is the bit that a lot of people don't know about Business in Focus. We have 9 owned properties, 3 managed properties, which amount to around about 350, 370 tenants. And we help people in that way to come in easily, to move on easily, to expand and to grow, and try and take the headache out of the accommodation for them so they can concentrate on their business issues. And we've managed to bring those two assets together quite recently into recent ventures that we've started under the Welsh Government's Enterprise Hub programme, having opened co-working spaces in Carmarthen and in Newtown to help and support those more rural areas. So that is probably the smallest nutshell that I can fit Business in Focus into.
there are lots of organisations delivering business support and advice. What would you say is the USP of Business in Focus?
I would say that we have a 30-year pedigree in really listening and understanding our client needs. And we use that listening to design really robust business support programs that work. And then we listen to the people who are providing the funding for those programs, whether that's Welsh Government, whether that's the UK Government, whether that's local authorities, to really understand what they need to do to be accountable for that public funding. And so we deliver quality that works. We're able to deliver robust key performance indicators that those accountable for the funding have to be able to demonstrate. And we do that because we have these fantastic people and a real dedication and team spirit for making it work, both for the end user client, the business, and for the funding client.
And in terms of the challenges that you see businesses facing at the moment, I mean, Brexit sits there, whatever you view on it, it's created uncertainty. But what else do you see are the major obstacles that businesses face with the economy as it is at the moment?
I think keeping up with technology and accessing technology across Wales is key. I should say, actually, before I go into this question, that I decided that having talked about the strength and depth of Business in Focus, it behoved me to go and find out the views of these advisors at the coalface. So my answer is informed by them rather than just my own views. And these are the things that they came up with. So technology is definitely an issue in terms of just making sure that people keep up and are using it to the best of their ability. We're also hearing from our clients about skills and retaining talent. In a time of high employment, it's hard to find the skills that you need. And of course, Brexit does have an impact on that because some of our clients are finding that some of their long-standing EU members of staff are considering going home or actually going home. We also, I think, are seeing a fair amount of uncertainty going forward. And obviously Brexit is the trigger for that, but it's the fact that Brexit is stopping other things happening. So it's stopping some investment, it's stopping some ability to plan to the future. Although I do get some really quite interesting and positive information back from our advisors who do international advice to clients around how clients are preparing for the unknown that's ahead of them.
We know that for many businesses, they can often struggle to get the people that they need with the skills that they need. Coming back to your work with Chwarae Teg, there are many people out there with the skills to offer to business, and of course, many of them are women who face barriers to going back into employment because of the caring role that you've mentioned earlier on. What more do you think could be done to try to remove or lower those barriers?
I think there are things that we can do in business support and in government. I think a lot of it now is about also the expectations we have of our families and ourselves. So what expectations do we have of our sons and daughters when they're growing up? Do we automatically think that if you're a bloke, you should be a breadwinner? Do we automatically think that if you're a woman, you're necessarily going to have extended career breaks? So some of it is about, and you can see that changing in families already, about shared responsibilities, about changing our expectations of ourselves and our families. So some of it is for society to do, and society, slowly but surely, is doing that. I think as far as business is concerned, it's making sure that the sort of support that we're able to give is adaptable to the people who need it. So one of the things I'm really proud about is that in the Business Wales service, which we deliver across Wales with our partners for Welsh Government, 55% of our clients are women. Now, that absolutely tracks the demographic, but it must mean that the service is appealing to both women and men and is adapting itself in the right way. So I think a lot of it is about building skills, building confidence, providing the same sort of training to both genders, but making sure that you're doing it in a way that people feel they can access it and that it's not scary and that it suits them and it fits them.
Do you think there's a need for cultural change as well? I've had conversations with young women who are high flyers in their field. They're in the private sector, they're very ambitious, but they feel if they have children that somehow they'll be seen as not ambitious enough because they're women, and they feel that somehow they won't reach their ultimate aim. So is there a need to talk to businesses still and say, hang on a second, you've got to make sure you combat that kind of attitude?
I think you're absolutely right, and I think a lot of it is about role models and women in senior positions, showing that we all do things if we believe that we can do them. I think it's no mistake that quite often actors and actresses are the children of actors and actresses. You've seen people who can do something, you've seen that you can do the same thing. So it's about making sure that there are role models in senior positions or in primary positions in business, and making those role models relatable. So not somebody who you look at and think, well, that's amazing and that's a woman, but I could never do that, but helping to show the journey they've been on to get there. But I also think there is still, it's very important in business to make sure that you are appointing for talent and for experience and expertise, and recognising all the different ways in which that might manifest itself. I think if you are really egalitarian in terms of how you identify merit, then you won't ever have a problem with equal opportunities. But that's quite hard to do.
Are there any countries that we could look at that will provide us with a good example of what we should aspire to?
I mean, everybody always looks at...
Nordic, isn't it? There's the Nordic countries people look at, yes.
Companies. And the challenge in that is there are some really good practices there, but one of the key issues in the Nordic countries is they do have higher tax rates, because that is what pays for the support that they are able to give. And that, for the UK, is always the tricky bit, is are you able to fund the things you want to do? And the funding comes from higher tax rates. That's an established cultural position in Scandinavia. It's not an established cultural position here. But I think an awful lot of the voluntary work that's happening and the accountability that companies are taking on themselves, that will filter through the whole economy in due course. It's very, very different, even from when I started work.
And in terms of, if we look at some of the Nordic countries, you're quite right. I mean, I read a book recently called A Year of Living Danishly, and the point's made there that it's where I first came across the word hygge. And the point's made there that high tax rates, but people get a lot back in return. So they don't mind, because they get such an all-enveloping package that helps them in their careers and helps them to raise families and to look after people. Is that, do you think, a viable option for us? Do you think we can get to a position where people will accept that kind of change?
I think that's a really interesting question, because if you could wiggle your nose and get there now, and everything was in place, then I'm fairly sure you would get a reasonable amount of take-up for that. The tricky bit is the journey. It's helping people to understand, if they're paying more tax, are they absolutely going to see it tomorrow appearing in the thing that it is you said they were going to get out of that? And I think that's the really hard bit.
For our younger listeners, I should point out that wiggling your nose comes from a series called Bewitched, where the mother could wiggle her nose and make things happen through magic spells. Just, if you're under 40, then really I just wanted to explain that to you. But if we look then at business in focus and the future, what are the challenges you still want to address as the chief executive?
For us, it's always important that while we're keen to grow and keen to expand what we do, that we're doing that for the right reason. So we are there to support enterprise. So growth for its own sake shouldn't be something that we're just chasing, but it is something we want to do because we believe that we deliver a really high quality service to all of our clients, and we want to extend the impact of that. And to do that, we have to address a number of challenges. So the things that we're identifying, I mean, we're a medium-sized business ourselves, so a lot of the challenges that our clients see, we also see, are making sure that we can build the capacity to do that, working within the fairly tight margins that we have to work in, and making sure that we ready ourselves and dig into this knowledge that I've talked about to make sure that we are designing and thinking about what business support in the future needs to look at and adapting ourselves to do that. And some of that is about working smarter and using technology better. And a chunk of what we achieve is through creating the right partnerships, working with the right companies so that we can all come together to deliver the best solutions.
And in terms of encouraging more women not just into the workplace as employees, but in terms of encouraging more women into business. Drawing again your experience as the chair of the South East Wales Network, what do you think needs to be done? Is there a confidence issue? We know there's a confidence issue across Wales, but is there a particular confidence issue amongst women? Are there particular barriers? What do you think could be done for the future?
I'm very wary of pointing to women and saying it's a confidence thing. I think people's confidence comes from their circumstances. So the points that I made earlier about the various things in terms of the skills background, the credit track record of women, the logistical issues, if you can address those, then you build the confidence of the individual. But a lot of it is about finding the right role models. So, we have clients like, for example, Danielle Davis. She started the Tad Mama collection, which is a online clothing brand that's proving very successful. She did that because she decided she didn't want to return to her teaching career after her maternity leave, so she decided to do something else. Finding people like that who are on the journey, who have started it recently, they make a big difference. So I think an awful lot of it is helping to provide the skills, making those skills, the access to those skills accessible for people, and then pointing to the people who've done it or who are on the road to doing it, so that the people who are thinking, I'm not sure if I can do this, I'm not sure if this is me, I'm too scared, I'm too worried, can say, yeah, I can give that a go.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely on that. One of the issues that, again, we've talked about before in this series is the need to show examples of people who've been successful in order to inspire others. It's one thing for a politician to say, well, there are opportunities in that sector over there, because the response will be, well, you haven't done it. You haven't run a business. I want to see somebody who's done it and been successful. And of course, people knowing about those successes as well, that's really important. They've done it. Their background's similar to mine. I can do it. And those examples are really important. I want you to imagine we're sitting here in 10 years' time, and we're looking back at the past decade. If I was to ask you, what would you have liked to see happen in Wales in that decade, what would your answers be?
Now that's easy. It's very easy to sit in the future and say, this is what I want it to look like. So, and I've got a very clear picture on that. So I want to see Wales with a really strong identity. When you think of the beauty of Wales, the quality of life in Wales, and our very useful location as part of the UK, as being close to Europe in whatever form that relationship is, close to the Atlantic, that is a fantastic basis for a strong identity. I want to see us building on the strengths of the different areas of Wales, so tourism, our capacity for renewable energy, things like the compound semiconductor cluster in East Wales, our creative sector, our finance sectors. I want to see us building those and having those as very prominent parts of the Welsh economy. I want to see us having really strong connections, and some of that is about making sure that technology is completely robust across Wales. But also it's the geographic, so it's making the connections, and in particular not overlooking the connections with England. So you've got your M4 corridor, you've got, we're developing Ebba Vale. I'm on the Tech Valley Strategic Advisory Board. Ebba Vale isn't just connected to Cardiff, it's connected to Birmingham. You've got your M55 corridor and the connections to Manchester and Merseyside. I want to see us, this is quite a long shopping list I've got here, but I want to see us keeping our talent in creating skills, using the universities and colleges that we've got, and attracting people back so that our businesses have the skills for the future. And so fundamentally, the people here, going right round back to the identity and the beauty and the quality of life, the people here achieve what they want and have a good quality of life. So I'm wiggling my nose again for that.
One of the things I found over the years is that we sometimes overemphasise the need to keep people in Wales. And we do need to provide opportunities for people in Wales, that's true. But also we want to try and bring people back with the experience that they have, clearly. And one of the issues, certainly I remember in rural Wales at one time, was a perception that if people had gone to live in London, Birmingham, whatever, that the opportunities weren't there for them if they came back. And a lot of them were teachers, of course there were opportunities for them. Do you think there's scope for, maybe it's something that you do, but for scope for creating a network that connects people who've left Wales who want to come back with the opportunities that exist in Wales?
It's not something I'd thought of, but it's a really interesting idea. I completely agree with you that if we try and sort of home grow everything and keep it here, then we close our eyes to the opportunities elsewhere and the knowledge you can build elsewhere that you bring back in again. So I think there's also a case to be made for attracting people into Wales. So I wasn't born and brought up in Wales. I came here immediately after university. I've spent my entire working life in Wales, and I have loved working here. It's a brilliant place to live. It's a brilliant place to contribute to. And there are lots of people like me. So it is about making sure that Wales positions itself very proudly as a brilliant place to live and to work. One of the things, for example, I sit on the Public Services Board for Bridgend, and one of the things I didn't know before that is how low the crime rate is in Bridgend. Now, that's not something we talk about, but it doesn't half make a difference if you want to put your business there or live there as an individual. Those sorts of things we can be really proud of.
No, that's very true. I mean, we sometimes forget that business people, when they look to invest somewhere or set up a business, they are humans at the end of the day. Yeah. They do want to live somewhere which they think is a nice place to live. One of the things I just wanted to touch with you is something we mentioned earlier on. We talked about the issue of confidence, and we talked about it in the context of women setting up businesses. But of course, you're quite right to point out that confidence is an issue that we've struggled with for a while in Wales. I get the impression that younger people don't have the same difficulties that my generation had, for example, in terms of moving into business, where it was seen as too risky. Do you think we still have an issue with turning the entrepreneurial flair that exists into a tangible business because people sometimes lack the confidence to do it?
I think that there will always be people who are concerned about and less confident than others. But what I seem to be seeing, both through the work that we do, but also looking at my daughter and her friends and her colleagues, is I think people are going to have far more portfolio careers. So they may be in work, in employment, they may have their business that they do online by the side, they may move in and out of employment and in and out of business. And I think creating that ability to create your own destiny and the skills that sit behind that, I think is really key to us. So a lot of the work that is done, so we deliver part of the Welsh Government's Big Ideas Wales service, which helps young people to start businesses and helps the service helps businesses to helps people in school to and outside education to create their aspirations for entrepreneurship. I think building that sort of capability and that sort of ambition in people is going to benefit them, whether they actually then come up with a good business idea and start it, or whether they go into work and use that flair in their employed career. So I think there is less of a confidence issue. I'll always go behind confidence to say, okay, what is it that builds confidence? It's getting the skills to do what it is you need to do. It's turning the unknown into something that you know sufficient about that you can have a crack at, and you've seen other people having a crack at it and they've managed it as well. So I think I always go behind confidence to what is it that is causing you not to have that confidence.
And the other issue is access to capital, of course. One of the reasons why the Development Bank was set up is because banks in Britain have had and still have a reputation for being very conservative in terms of what they look to finance. And businesses have said to me it's got worse because with the loss of local bank managers who know the people, who know the turf, everything's done now almost by algorithm. And there's no way where that a bank has any scope to look at a particular business and take a bit of a punt on it, a business that might become very successful. Do you find that's an issue for some of the businesses that you meet? And if it is an issue, is the Development Bank something that poses part of the solution?
We do still find that as an issue. I would say it is not the overriding issue that I was hearing perhaps 5 or 6 years ago, but it's still definitely an issue for business. We are also the local delivery partner for the Startup Loan, and we work very closely with the Development Bank, both in that and our other business support programmes, to make sure that we are connecting up the advice and the finance. And we certainly find, we wondered whether the Startup Loan, which is a UK government fund, which provides unsecured loans for people looking to start their business or who have recently started their business. And we did wonder whether that would start to be seriously competed with by the new products that the banks are bringing online. And we're finding that there is still a very definite need for that. So in the last year, for example, we distributed £3 million worth of loan finance to around about 300 people. And we are finding that companies or people wanting to start in business still have this sort of speed bump that they struggle to get over if they don't have security to attract finance. And so the startup loan helps to bridge that gap. We certainly find that working with the development bank and the various ways in which they have of supporting business and being able to take that little bit more of a risk than purely commercial risk, that makes a big difference for people. It's always difficult funding startup businesses because you've got to take a risk, and if you need to make a commercial return on that, that can be problematic.
Well, Katy, it's been a great pleasure having you on the podcast today, and best of luck for the future in whatever you decide to do. But thanks for joining us and for giving us an insight into the work you've been doing over the years and, of course, the work of Business in Focus. So thanks for coming.
Thank you very much. It's been fun.